Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So lovely to have you here joining us for this Cambridge CEM webinar today. It's a really exciting one as we've got Rukaiya from the Cedar School joining us today. So I'm just going to cover a quick couple of housekeeping points. So the first is that we actually can't hear any members of the audience throughout this webinar. So if you have any questions for us, please post them in the questions box. We've got some time at the very end of the webinar where we'll be picking up on these and asking both Kate Bailey and Rukaiya the questions. You'll also receive a certificate of attendance. This will be sent to you by email 1 hour after the webinar. And finally, you will also receive a copy of the video recording and also a copy of the handouts, which you can actually download during the webinar at any point. If you just select the handouts drop down, you'll be able to download these. And just one final piece of housekeeping from me. If you have any technical difficulties, just drop me an email and I will pick these up. Next slide, please, Kate. So just a quick rundown on the agenda today. We've got a very packed agenda. So we've done the introductions. We'll then introduce Kate Bailey and Rukaiya. Kate Bailey is then going to talk about unlocking student potential with our assessments. This will then be followed by an overview of the Cedar School and their context from Rukaiya. And then we'll be ending the webinar on a Q&A session between Kate Bailey and Rukaiya, followed by questions from you, our attendees. So without further delay, I would be delighted to hand over to my colleague, Kate Bailey.
Hello, and I'd like to add my very warm welcome to Kate. It's lovely to be with you today. You don't want to hear a lot about me, but I'll just give you a little bit of background. I've been working in CEM for over 25 years, quarter of a century, believe it or not, and my area of expertise and interest is formative assessment and how that can be used to support the transformation of student outcomes. The best part of my job is one that I have sadly not been able to do now for a number of months, and that is to visit our customers. So coming out and seeing exactly what's going on in schools and how what we do can transform young lives is just the best part of the job, meeting some students and having a chat with the teachers. And my fun fact is that I have ranidophobia, which I discovered there actually is a word for this weekend. So lying in my bed, having my morning cup of tea at the weekend, I heard a very loud squealing noise from one of my daughters. And when I went downstairs, we found that a little group of frogs had decided to take refuge under one of my armchairs. It might be common in some parts of the world, but in the northeast of England, that is not common and it's very off-putting. So ranidophobia apparently is a fear of frogs, which I now discover that I have. Moving on, I am going to ask Rukaiya to introduce herself, our lovely guest for today. So she's just going to talk you through her background a little bit. Rukaiya.
Hello, hi. Thank you for the introduction, Kate. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Rukaiya Salman, and I'm currently heading the Cedar School franchise as the head of the Cedar School System. And a little bit about myself. I graduated from Lahore University of Management Sciences in 2006 after I became a chartered financial analyst. And I've also completed the postgraduate certificate of education from the University of Nottingham in 2014. So it's been around 14 years, that I've been part of different teaching and leadership roles. And besides attending Cambridge Schools Conference as a delegate in 2018 and 19, I have also, conducted multiple workshops with educational professionals from different educational institutions, and also a member of ISD, a US-based nonprofit organization, and attended the International Expo in 2020 and 2021. Other than that, I have met all the criteria to be accredited as a Cambridge program leader for the Cambridge International Certificate in Educational Leadership. And besides all of this, I'm a strong supporter of EdTech tools and currently working with educators from USA and UK so that we can collectively introduce many innovative e-learning tools in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thanks, Rukaiya. As you will have heard, she is eminently well equipped to talk to you about her use of chem in her school and how that's helping her make a difference with her students. So I'm just going to take the next few slides just to talk through some basics about what it is that we do in chem, our assessment, and how that's intended to help. And then Rukaiya is going to bring that to life once I've gone through those slides, and she's going to talk about how that's actually making a difference in her school. So CHEM is the Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring, and it is part since June 2019 as a part of the Cambridge University Cambridge Assessment. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and our mission is to unlock every student's potential, and we do that by using the very best research-based and learning solutions. We have the same aims as you do in your schools, and that is to support all your learners to reach their full potential. We already work with a number of Cambridge International schools and who recognise the quality of our assessment, and that quality is recognised in the UK and in more than 90 countries around the world. So for us, bringing chem into the Cambridge family has been a really exciting opportunity to support more international schools than we currently have been focusing on, than we have focused on in the past in the UK. So this is a really exciting time for us. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about us and our assessments. So those assessments were developed over 30 years ago now. And were rooted in one of the largest and longest established research groups in the UK, looking at research into the impact of formative assessment on children from the ages of 3 to 18. All of our work, our assessment and reporting are built on a really strong research base. They're evidence-driven. Everything we do is empirically tested. And it's tested in the market. It's tested with you, the professionals, and it's all built on a foundation of non-commercial academic practice. The assessments that we deliver are not curriculum specific. They're curriculum relevant, but not specific. So they can be used and are used by schools applying a range of curricula. Some might be doing a national curriculum, some might be doing a Cambridge curriculum, others might be following an IB curriculum. Our assessments are computer delivered and they are adaptive. Computer delivery makes it very efficient to run those assessments, very easy and quick to do, but also the adaptive nature of those assessments mean that we are assessing children right around their area of ability. In standard flat testing, we spend quite a lot of time presenting children with questions that are either too easy or too difficult for them. But that computer adaptive algorithm makes sure that we are delivering questions at just the right area of challenge for each student. So every child gets the ability to demonstrate their true potential and to remain engaged throughout the whole process. The assessments are, while not diagnostic clinically, are clear indicators of where further intervention may be required. So they might show you that a student is really struggling with a particular area in learning to read, such as word decoding. And then we can point you in the right direction to how to look for strategies that might impact on that word decoding. Once they have mastered that skill a little bit better, that has a knock-on effect on all of the later developmental stages, which means that you are able to improve overall their reading level. These assessments are not designed to be high stakes. So there is not a level that the student must reach. There's no pass rate. All we want to do, our aim for these assessments, is to get the most accurate picture possible of a child's ability at a moment in time, and that information is for you, the professionals, to use in classrooms with children to ensure that each of them reaches their full potential. Our assessments complement your use of the Cambridge pathway. So every stage of the Cambridge pathway is supported by some formative assessment that's available from us. And Cambridge schools have already started using chem assessments, have found those assessments to be invaluable in informing teaching and learning at every phase. And the schools tell us that this holistic approach of combining curriculum with formative assessment and qualifications is leading to better examination results. I'm going to take a slight pause here to open a poll. You'll see come up on your screen. Kate will make that poll come live in a moment. We want to ask you, is your school currently using baseline assessment? If you could indicate in the poll whether you are or you aren't, that will be lovely. We'll leave the poll open for a few seconds, and then we're going to pick up on the results of the poll at the end of the webinar. I'll just give you a couple more seconds. Okay, so we'll close that poll now and we'll move on. Thank you all for participating. So this is just a summary of the product suite that we have in Chem. So we start with the aspect system, which is used for the smallest, the youngest children, age 3 to 4. They're often in nurseries, kindergartens. And then we have BASE, which is for the first year of formal education. That is the year in which the children start to learn to read properly. And then INCUS for the later primary. And then we move into secondary and post-16 with MIGIS, YELLIS and ALICE. So I'm just going to talk you through the key features of our Cambridge Chem assessments. One of the main advantages here is that there is no marking. So there is very little effort from a teacher perspective. The results are turned around really quickly, often within an hour, but certainly within 24 hours, and they're very easy to administer. You can sit the assessment with the students in one lesson. So for, let's say, year 7 children aged between 11 and 12, the assessment can be carried out with a whole class in a 45-minute lesson. The assessments are adaptive, as I've mentioned, so those questions use an algorithm to tailor the delivery, which is linked to the student's ability level as measured by the questions that they have already answered, which makes it very engaging, but also very fair, and it gives you a very accurate indicator of ability. It's very flexible. So it fits into a lesson easily. It is easily administered through quite basic with a technology specification, and you're able to assess when it's right for you, for your school, in groups or individually. So it's not like sitting an examination where you have to have everybody in the hall at the same time. It's far more flexible than that. A reminder that this assessment is skills-based. It's not intended to measure all curriculum coverage, curriculum acquisition. What we're doing is we are measuring skills that we know are linked to later exam success, and indeed are linked to a student's ability to access the curriculum in the most effective way. So we're looking at vocabulary, we're looking at mathematics, we're looking at some non-verbal reasoning. All of those things have links to the curriculum, but are not specific to any curricula. So alongside content acquisition, students need these skills to be able to make the most of that content to do well in their examinations later on. So what types of data do we give you? So starting with baseline data. This is really important data for you to have right at the start of a phase of education. When the students come to you, we do this very quick assessment that gives you a wealth of information to support what you do next and how you help each of those children to be successful. So we're identifying starting points. We're diagnosing gaps in learning. We're using the information to shape teaching to meet student learning needs. And the information that you get is presented at learner level, class level, subject level and school level. And indeed, if you're from a school group or a ministry, we can do it at global level as well. We look at longitudinal data. So the data allows you to monitor cohort performance over time, identify trends in your school over time, compare performance to previous years, and it helps you to target resources most effectively. It allows you to evaluate the impact of some of the interventions that you might have put in place as a result of that data. So you may find that there is a generally low levels of reading in your school compared to others in the same region, country, school group. And by putting interventions in place and retesting, you're able to see the impact of the work that you've done, of the investment of time and resources that you've made. Predictive data. So this predictive data, what we do is very closely linked to later outcomes. And as a result of that, it makes it very valuable information for setting both student, teacher and school targets. So we give indicators of likely grade outcomes at GCSE, IGCSE, A-level and IB diploma, and it allows you, you see a range of possible grades. You see the most likely grade, but then you see what are the chances of getting lower and higher grades. And by having that range of information available to you, you can set challenging targets at a school and at a student level. And you can plan interventions to help all of those students improve on areas of weakness and support students' progress with confidence because you have some data backing up your professional judgment. At the end of a period of study, you're able to look at value-added data, and that value-added data is comparing the original predictions that were made for the student and then what they actually achieved in those examinations. So you're evaluating those student outcomes based on the work that you've done with them over the time that they've been in your school. We show you the amount of progress that has been made and that you can compare that between students, subjects and classes in a way that allows you to really measure the impact of your teaching. And you can identify areas where more work needs to be done and areas where there is excellence in teaching and learner outcomes that can perhaps be shared with other departments or other schools. So together with your expertise as professionals and our expertise in delivering formative assessment, we are able to really make a difference to your teaching and learning, working together and making the best of that professional judgment and expertise and some objective data that supports you. Going to take a few moments to launch an additional poll. And this one is, bearing in mind what you've heard so far, how important is assessment data in your daily decision making now? So I'll give you a couple of moments to answer that, and then we will move on to the last couple of my slides before we move over to Rukaiya. Okay, and we'll move on. So using a CHEM baseline assessment in your school, there is a process that we suggest that you follow, but everyone takes a slightly different flavour of that depending on where they are and what their aims are. But what the route, the kind of process that it broadly follows is this. First thing to do is get those students assessed. And the best thing you can do for them and for yourselves is to assess as early in the year as possible. Those of you who are out there and I've just started the school year, if you haven't already done a baseline assessment, I would urge you to do that now. It's most impactful when it's done right at the start of a period of study. So we're assessing those students and with adaptive, personalised and tailored assessment. And we are giving you the formative and diagnostic feedback that informs that learning. Then we're analysing that data. So by analysing it, we're gaining an objective measure of the students' strengths and weaknesses, and we can identify what students can and can't do before you start to teach them. You're able to differentiate really early on in the year which students need more help with around language, which need more help around numeracy. You can get a picture of that so much more quickly with this assessment than you would by observing what's going on in the classroom over a number of months. And you can get indicators at this stage as well as to the likely grade outcomes at GCSE and IGCSE, A-level and IB, and start planning then how you are going to do your best to achieve those top grades. So at the planning stage, this is where we're setting up students for success. We are raising expectations among our fellow teachers and among our students. And one of the things that we as education professionals, we know is really important here is setting good and challenging goals, being really ambitious about what can be achieved. And so rather than being quite moderate in setting our goals, make them motivational. That extra level of challenge and motivation in setting targets can make a real difference. Planning early interventions as well at this stage, as I've mentioned, where you can identify that things need to be different. Now's the time to plan what you're going to do differently. And then having done those assessments, analysed the data and formulated a plan, it's now over to you to use that data to support your professional judgment, help you target your resources effectively and shape your teaching to meet your students' learning needs. At the end of the cycle, it's really important that we then reflect on what's worked and what hasn't worked. So our student data on student outcomes and progress can show you where good things have happened and where more work needs to be done, and will give you the space and the data to be able to reflect on how you might do things differently next time. One of the main I think challenges in teaching and the ways that CEM can support you is to be constantly reflecting on your practice, not being, you know, kind of really caught up on what went wrong here and kind of beating ourselves up over the fact that some students didn't get the grades that they wanted. The important thing here is that we understand what went well, what didn't, and how can we get into a cycle of continuous improvement and learning as professionals. That's all I want to say about the overall offer. And now what I'd like to do is to hand over to Rukaiya, who is going to bring all of that to life from her own perspective, talking through those experiences from Cedar. So I'm going to help Rukaiya bring that to life by asking her some questions that will really draw out how she's used that in the Cedar School. Rukaiya, it's lovely to welcome you to our webinar today.
Same here. Very happy to be here.
Good, good. So I'm going to start by asking you, from your perspective, Rukaiya, what do you see are the benefits of using a baseline assessment?
Yeah, so Kate, I would like to answer that question, you know, with giving more references as to how we used it at the Cedar School. But overall, I would like to comment that, you know, baseline assessments such as CEM add huge value to Cambridge International Schools, especially a school like Cedar and many other schools in Pakistan, because the best part is that the quality of, you know, this assessment is widely recognized in UK and globally for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And, you know, it informs the teachers where intervention may help student outcomes, giving our teachers a very deep understanding of the learning environment seen by children and young people. And there are, you know, like major benefits, such as it measures the verbal, non-verbal and mathematical skills that form the foundation of further learning. As we all know, literacy and numeracy is very important, and it also accurately measures a child's potential and progress, which is a very valuable part of understanding and responding to their educational needs. And we've used all three papers at Cedar School: YELLIS, MIDIUS and INCAS, right? Because we only have from grade 4 to grade 11. So how YELLIS has basically helped the Cedar family is that YELLIS baseline assessment for age like 15 to 16 has been of great help to our Cedar team and students as well, especially in the time of the pandemic. Because what happened that in March 2020, you know, the panic started to storm up due to the worldwide spread of COVID-19, schools closed down. And on 23rd March 2020, Cambridge International announced that they're canceling exams all over the world for the safety of their students. And we were supposed to use alternative methods to provide students with fair grades. And then an update came in April 2020, which provided guidance for, you know, schools for awarding grades. And we were ecstatic because according to that guidance, we were allowed to use, to get information from assessments such as YELLIS from CEM. And we had already bought CEM tests for our Cedar School. So we made all our grade 10 and grade 11 students appear for YELLIS CEM assessment so that, you know, those reports could be used as evidence. So this was, you know, a practical example of how we used YELLIS at the Cedar School. Then the MIDIUS exam, which is for students in grades 7, 8 and 9, has been really helpful also because while schools were closed down in Karachi, the academic team at the Cedar School was working on the new IGCSE syllabus for our incoming 10th grade. And research stated that, most institutions globally are now moving towards the IGCSE program because of its propensity to align students with 21st century skills, and therefore Cedar School also adopted it. But we conveyed this information to our current 9th graders, and through different webinars, and also shared the mid-year SCEM reports with our parents and Cedar families. And now I would like to share how those mid-year reports really help the families at Cedar, because it has an individual pupil record that gives you a visual picture of a student's assessment result. But what really stands out and is very different in my opinion is the prediction table, because it's very useful for students and teachers, because it shows what grade is that student is likely to get, and in every subject, without even giving exams. So those chance graphs in mid-year SCEM helps parents understand the realistic achievements of their child. And this way, this gives them various, it aids them in option choices for selecting subjects. Like, for example, if Chem report shows that the child is likely to get a D in maths or an E in maths, then it's not a good idea for that child to choose Add Maths, for example, right? So Chem reports not only help predict grades, but they also helped the students at Cedar School to select the right subjects for their child. They have to choose those optional subjects at the end of grade 9. So it really helped them. And that's where Chem was really handy. And then besides YELIS and MIDIUS, we are also using INCAS at the Cedar School from grade 4 to grade 6. And they've also been very helpful. INCAS is slightly different from MIDIUS because, it shows the age of the child and the, student's age and where they are assessed into the scores, according to the subsections of the modules, giving a more diagnostic approach and realistic feedback. And it helps the teachers to target particular areas of need. For example, the teachers can identify whether a child is weak in vocabulary section or understanding the comprehension, and then they can tailor that lesson, or their teaching to meet the individual needs. So I feel like overall, in all our grades, because Cedar School is only from grade 4 to grade 11 at the moment, it has overall helped us with, various different, in various different scenarios, like I said, during the pandemic, and even in our admission process, because not only did it help the Cedar applicants, but also tremendously helped in the admission process. As students were not allowed to come on campus for their admission test due to safety precautions, we started conducting Chem tests on Zoom for admission applicants. So, a lot of benefits for the Cedar School because of Chem.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Rukaiya. It's a very thorough answer. You've talked quite a lot there around the specific benefits. I think you have been the visionary who has brought Chem to your school, but I imagine that you've had to do a job of selling your vision to your colleagues on the teaching staff. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so basically what happened that in 2019, before the pandemic, we were allowed to travel to these conferences and they used to happen in person. So Cambridge Schools Conference took place in Cambridge, UK. And because I was passionate to learn more about, international practices, I signed up for it. And there was a big exhibition hall over there where, at the conference where it provided delegates with a unique networking opportunity, and we could meet representatives of educational resources and also interact with them. So as I was making my way, around the hall, I met Mark Fraser from Chem. And he was telling all of us, how Chem offers reliable and useful assessments. And I found it really impressive. So I attended his breakout session. And, before I went to the session, I conducted a little bit of research and found out that the Cambridge Assessment and Cambridge University Press had acquired, Chem at that time. And as I sipped my hot chocolate, because I was feeling really cold, Pakistan's really hot. So I had no idea that Chem baseline assessments will be like one of the best discoveries of the Cedar School. And I brought all that information back to Pakistan, Karachi, and discussed all my findings, about Chem with the board of Cedar School. And our board has always been very open to new development in EdTech, because Chem is not the only EdTech tool that we use at school, right? There are many other tools that we are using, and we are always looking forward to, international curriculums. So they agreed to purchase Chem tests for for our school students as well as for new applicants. And then once I got really good training from one of the CHEM representatives, David. And after I understood the guidelines for conducting the test, I trained my team and helped them understand as well. And we started using it in February 2020, and then there's been no stopping. We've been using it for the past 2 years almost for all our new admissions in 2020 and 2021. So, I mean, that's the story behind it.
Very, very good. Thank you. I just want to ask you a question now specifically about the relationship between the assessments that you do and the Cambridge pathway. Do they sit well together in your schools?
Yeah, I think they do. Because you see, CHEM assessments not only complement but also strengthen the Cambridge pathway, because the core product for 8, 6 to 11, which we use in grade 4, 5, and 6 in CAS, that assesses reading, maths, developed ability, attitude to learning, and that's very relevant at that point. And that's what the Cambridge curriculum also emphasizes on. And then it also provides research on how to support different profiles. And that's what's very important in a primary school. Then coming to mid-years, which is for, ages 11 to 14, and we use it in grade 7, 8, and 9 also. It is carried out at the beginning of a course and, gives you a whole profile of a student and cohort ability. And then coming to YELIS, which is for students of the age of 15 and 16 and used for grade 10 and 11 students, it does give you like a similar profile like mid-years does, but it also provides evidence of how much value the school has added, allowing students to provide to the best of their ability. So I feel like they are perfectly aligned, the Cambridge pathway and the CHEM test.
Fantastic. Just thinking specifically now about the fallout from the pandemic, Rukaiya, how has CHEM supported you as students have returned to school and to classroom-based learning?
That's a very important question, I feel, because now that students are coming back to classroom and schools are gradually opening up, whether it's a fully, blended schedule or in person, it is invaluable for schools to know precisely what progress they have made, because it was very difficult for teachers to, understand what a child is really learning when they were conducting online classes, right? So, a lot of Cambridge schools in Pakistan, we need to analyze and evaluate the consequences of school closures. And at this point, we, need to get reliable and stable data as to where they stand, right? So teachers need to know what level the students are starting from. And I feel this is where CHEM is very important, because you need baseline data. Baseline assessment is well established. It is regarded positively by teachers globally. So I feel at this point more than, it is very important for us to take up assessments like CHEM, because they provide a very useful and robust way to measure students' progress once back in the classroom. Like when we started our academic year in August 2021, we shared all the CHEM reports with our teachers, okay, from grades, from grade 4 all the way up to grade 11. And it provided a very useful picture to our teachers of, what a child knows at a certain point in time. And the best thing is that they can discover those gaps in learning. Because until and unless a teacher doesn't know about the gaps, she will not be able to have a deeper understanding of the learning environment that the child experienced in the past 18 months when they were online. So therefore, I feel, it's a very important time for schools to consider taking up baseline assessments such as CHEM to find out, what the student ability is, where they stand, and how can it be made better in future.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think my final question for you, Rukaiya, is around parents. In the UK, for example, that the CHEM information is very rarely shared with parents. But I understand, particularly for you, that parents are a major stakeholder in your schools, and I wonder how you explain CHEM assessments to parents and how do you manage their queries?
So obviously, you have to educate the parents about any new tool that comes to school, right? So we just don't email the CHEM reports to them without explaining it to them. Otherwise, they're not even going to look at the report. So what we do is that we do believe in sharing regular updates with parents on, their progress, and sharing the chem report is one way how we do that. So what we do at the beginning of the year, when you have your orientation week, we host webinars or in-person meetings to explain chem reports. Like usually I, explain it to parents how you can read a chem report, an INCAS report, a mid-years report, or a YELIS report. And once you've done that, then they receive, then they understand the details of their child's chem report. And once they identify the needs of the student, they are well informed as to how they can help their child, to reach a higher level. So I feel like because chem is part of the Cambridge family, they're applicable to all curriculums and can be applied to any school level studies. So, it's quite a good resource for our families.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rukaiya. I think that's my questions. Can we, Kate, have a brief look at the polls, and then we will take some questions from our audience?
Absolutely. Sure. So the first one I'm going to share is is your school using baseline assessments? I'm just going to share the results with you on that one. I don't know if you can see my screen, Kate.
Let me have a look. Audience view. Yes, I can.
So I don't know if you would.
So can you? Yeah, hang on 1 second. It's very small. Okay, blimey. 6% of you, only 6% are currently using baseline assessment. That's amazing. So 6% are using baseline assessment. 35% haven't experienced baseline assessment yet. 29% use teacher developed assessment, and 29 use Cambridge checkpoint assessment. So I think what that says to me, Rukaiya, is that your experiences are reaching new ears here. So we've got an audience who really haven't got that experience of the power that baseline assessment has. So it's a great opportunity for you to bring kind of those benefits alive for our audience. That's fascinating. Do you have any comments yourself on that? Are you surprised by that small number? That's a question for you, Rukaiya.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I thought it's for the audience. Okay, yes, I am pretty surprised. But then you see, Pakistan is a very different market right now. We are, still, coming out of the pandemic and, adjusting to online tools. And for a lot of schools, this whole transition to online learning has been quite difficult because of a lot of factors, parents not being able to cope up with it or lack of resources. So I guess gradually awareness will come in about baseline assessments. And, that's why talks with parents also really helps, because that's when you educate the parents about the different EdTech tools.
Yes, of course. So in the UK, in the US, or let's say the United Arab Emirates, for example, we would be expecting to see 90% of schools using a baseline assessment. It's really very common practice here now. That's really interesting. That's great. Kate, would you share the results of the second poll with me, and I will let everybody know what happened there?
Of course. So I'm just sharing my screen. Hopefully you can read this, Kate.
I can, yes. So how important is assessment data in your daily decision making? Well, that's pretty overwhelming. 79% of you say that it is extremely important, and 18% say it is somewhat important. And then there's just a tiny number of people who selected the other option. So it's quite clear that nearly all of you understand the importance of assessment data, but don't yet understand the importance of baseline assessment data and how that can help you. So I really hope that what we've been presenting to you today can show you another set of assessment information that will be useful in your day-to-day practice. Kate, can I hand over to you to give us some questions from the floor, please?
Absolutely. So we've got a couple of questions here. If anyone has a burning question for Kate or Rukaiya, please post them in the questions box. We've got one already that I'd like both of you maybe to share your answers on, if that's okay. So someone has posted, we do not use Cambridge Pathway and we don't follow the English curriculum for our international primary schools. How can we get the most of the INCAS assessment that we have just started using this year?
Can I ask Rukaiya just to talk about, so maybe I should start. You do not have to be following a Cambridge curriculum, and you do not have to be following a UK curriculum to be able to get the benefit from INCAS. And the reason for that is that INCAS was not developed to align to a particular curriculum. It was developed from the developmental pathways that we know all students follow when they are learning to read and learning to be numerate. So we didn't start with a curriculum as a basis. We started with developmental psychology and an understanding of the order in which students acquire the different skills that lead them to be literate and numerate. So you can still use the data, but there is absolutely no problem there. I think how you apply it, so what you'll be having is an understanding of their level of literacy and their level of numeracy, which is applicable to a range of curricula. But I'm now going to just hand over to Rukaiya so that she can just bring that to life a little bit from her own perspective.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Kate, because you don't need to follow the English, the Cambridge English curriculum to benefit from INCAS, because like I said, it shows the difference between each student's age when they're assessed and delves into the scores of subsection of the modules to give a more diagnostic approach and realistic feedback. So schools can make good use of that, even if they're not following the Cambridge curriculum, for sure. Even we don't exactly follow the Cambridge curriculum in grade 4, 5, and 6. We have, we supplement it with many other different, research-based ideas. It is from grade 7 onwards that we are strictly following a Cambridge-based curriculum, and still INCAS has been very beneficial to us. So I don't think you need to worry about that.
I am delighted to share we've got some more questions. Sorry, Kate.
No, great.
So someone has asked, what exactly is a baseline assessment? Is that one that you would like to answer, Kate?
Yes, I'll take that. In a nutshell, the baseline assessment takes a measure of student cognitive ability at a point in time. And this is cognitive ability as in the skills that a student needs to be able to learn. So it's not about so much about what they've been taught or content in particular subjects. It's do they have the literacy and numeracy skills needed to learn and be successful in their examinations. That is basically it. So it's a very short measure of their cognitive ability, and by that I mean the skills that they need to learn and be successful as they go through school. Fantastic. I don't think I've ever responded to that question in such a short time. I usually manage to string it out for a good half an hour.
That's very, very
That was a challenge, a personal challenge for me.
So I've just got one more that I think it would really be beneficial for you both, particularly maybe Rukaiya, to answer. So we've got a delegate who has asked, how often and when, at what point in your school year, do you use the assessments?
We use them once in a year. So basically, at the end of the academic year. Because, when we measure the students' performance at the end of the academic year, it really, gives you a good report of what the child has achieved throughout the year. And then that report is passed on to parents and teachers so that they can prepare for the next year. CEM reports in June. We also had a summer remedial program at the Cedar School. So the parents were able to identify what the strengths and weaknesses were and then enroll their, kids accordingly in the remedial program. And then those same CHEM reports were shared with teachers in July before they started the academic session in August. So if it, when a teacher walks into a class, it's a very fresh class for her. She doesn't know her kids well. So basically CHEM is her starting point in getting to know the kids. So we basically take the test once in the academic year.
Fantastic, thank you. We're getting loads of questions here through, but I'm aware that we're actually running out of time. We're just about to nearly finish the webinar. So what I will do is I'll collate all of the questions and collate all of the answers and get them sent out to our delegates via email. So if I now hand over to Kate and Rukaiya to do final remarks, if that is okay.
I would like to make the SysTech announcement after Kate is done.
Okay. So just from me to thank you all again for your time and attention today. It's been lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you, and a huge thanks to Rukaiya for taking time out of her busy schedule to work so productively with CHEM. She really has been incredibly helpful with her pioneering approach to the use of this assessment in her region. So thank you, Rukaiya. And a final thank you as well to my other Kate, the other Kate, we're two Kates today, to the other Kate for running such a smooth and well-organized webinar.
Yes, thank you so much, Kate, for all the kind words. I'm pretty flattered, but I just wanted to share an exciting opportunity with all of you that the Cedar School is organizing a conference called SysTech. It is Cedar School Technology and Education Conference on November 11, 12, and 13. It's a 3-day-long event during which multiple sessions will take place simultaneously, and I'm hoping that CHEM assessments can also join us. And there'll be, lots of different themes, and it's very useful for educators. Let them be teachers, principals, head of schools, head teacher, or program coordinators. And we are aiming at educationalists from Pakistan as well as abroad. So please feel free to join in. Our website is www.systech.live, and I'll share the details with both the Kates over here. So hope to see you there. And thank you, Kate Bailey and Kate, the other one, for inviting me over here. I had a great time with all of you. And I hope I convince the audience to get them for their own school.
Thank you so much both. And it now just leaves me to end the webinar. Thank you all so much for attending. We've really enjoyed having you here on this webinar. Hope you have a great rest of the day.